Welcome to the Hardstyle Kettlebell Pro channel. This is Coach Luca. I'm here to answer all your training and programming questions. So we had a question by one of our viewers is how do I increase my ladders if I want to stay on a particular program longer than 12 weeks? It really depends what ladders are you doing at the moment and also what are your goals. If you're training with kettlebells, barbell, or body weight, every modality is going to be different, a different approach. So let's say if I'm doing body weight and I want to keep increasing my total volume, either my number of ladders or my reps per ladders. So first is you want to do a test of your exercise, either before your program starts or at the end. If you do a cycle, like a 12-week cycle, or you break it up into 2 6-week cycles, test at the end of the 6 weeks to get a new baseline. Let's say, for example, I start my push-ups and I can only do 5 reps. And my ladders for the program are 1, 2, 3. And I build up my ladders of 1, 2, 3 for 6 weeks until I'm able to do 10 ladders of 1, 2, 3. Take a little break for a few days and test your push-up rep max, your baseline. See how many you could do. Maybe you'll be able to do 10 and you'll surpass your previous rep max. So what you do from there, you can either increase the resistance or keep going with the same exercise. How would you increase your resistance with a push-up? You can either do a decline push-up, more aimed towards your shoulders, or you can add a resistance band to stay around the same 5 RM rep max. So then if you're the goal is that, then you just keep going with sets of 1, 2, 3 or ladders of 1, 2, 3, and you build it back up. Otherwise, if you stay with the same exercise and you don't change the intensity, you take your new rep max, which is 10 reps, and you base your ladders off that. So my ladders would be something like 2, 4, 6, and I'd build up the volume using ladders of 2, 4, 6. So hope that makes sense. People always ask me, how long should I rest between my sets? It depends on your program, depends on the amount of reps that you do, and it depends on your recovery and endurance. General guidelines is take your time. You don't want to compress the rest period for no reason in order to get a better workout or feel more burn or make it more intense. Make it intense during your set. Contract your muscles as hard as possible and use as many muscle fibers as you can throughout your body. That's going to make your set more intense. You're going to feel stronger. And during the rest period, just do fast and loose, recover through nasal breathing, and you'll know when you feel ready to repeat the same level of effort that you did in the previous set. Let's say if you do your first or your second set, for example, you do a set of 8, and then your next set, your reps drop off. If your reps drop off, that's probably because you pushed too hard on your first set or you didn't take enough rest in between sets. Typically what I do, for example, if I'm doing a 5x5 with a barbell or kettlebell, is I'll really take my time. If I'm going with heavy weights, sometimes I'll take up to 5-minute break or sometimes longer, sometimes even up to 10 minutes between each set. I know it sounds like a lot, but the weight is pretty heavy and is needed for full recovery. Alternatively, if you're doing, let's say, complex for muscle building and the weights are fairly light or medium, you can afford to take shorter rest period and not compromise your next set. As long as you're not overly fatigued and you don't blow through any of the strong first stop signs, meaning that you don't lose form, you don't slow down, and your rate of perceived exertion doesn't exceed 8 on 10. Another question we got is how would you schedule your press, squat, and rows in a routine? So you have your push, pull, and lower body, or push, lower body, pull, however you want to mix them up. You're always going to do mainly the 3 exercises every session. You're going to have one focus. Each session is your first exercise is going to be the hardest one. Let's say you divide your training into 3 days a week and you're going to do a push, a pull, and a lower body, whether it's a squat or a deadlift or a lunge, that's fine. You can do the same exercises every session or a variation of each, but emphasize the first one of that day, and that's going to be your heaviest or hardest one. Whether it's with weight or more volume, that's really up to you. So for example, I would do day 1, it would be push. That's going to be my hardest exercise. Then the next one would be either light or medium. weight or volume. So then the following session, it would be something different. The first one would be a squat or deadlift. And then I'd have my push-pull in a light or medium intensity or volume, and so on and so forth. Hope that makes sense. You can program barbells like this, body weight, kettlebells, complexes, whatever you like. Someone is asking how much weight should I increase for my next cycle. So if you reach the peak, let's say you're doing the triple progression, 5 sets of 10, and that's your peak, and then you want to start a new cycle and increase the weight. It depends. You may want to increase by 5, 10, 15, even 20 pounds, depending on the lift. If you are doing a very heavy barbell deadlift, maybe 15 pounds is more adequate, or perhaps even 20 pounds. That really depends on your level of strength, and also if you're doing single arm, single leg exercises, you may want to increase it by smaller amounts. See what's right for you, and it's really depending on your strength, your sex, and your level of experience, and that will tell you by how much weight you should increase. Someone is asking, how would you program an advanced jump progression? I'm no jumping expert, but I can tell you that if you are following a particular program and you know your capacity, aim to slowly increase your capacity over time. That could also be your intensity, so your power when you jump. So aim to jump a little bit higher or add a little more power into each jump when you do it. If you're doing something like as many jumps as possible within a given amount of time, aim to do it for longer and build your endurance first before you increase the intensity. You can take a baseline of how many jumps you can do before you slow down. So that's your baseline. Aim to do 50 to 80% in your work sets, because in a jump, you don't want to keep jumping and then slow down. That's going to have a negative effect on what you're trying to achieve. So make sure your form is crisp, your jumps are super powerful, and if you want to make them harder, aim to jump higher and more explosive. You can also do jumps on one leg as well, and that's going to make it much more challenging. How do you know when it's time to increase the weight on a program? You don't necessarily have to. If you're training with kettlebells, you might have to stay with the weight for very long time before increasing the bell size, particularly for a press. But let's say if you're doing barbell and you want to start with a strength building cycle, and then as you get stronger, you're able to do more reps with the same weight, then you could transfer the cycle into more of a higher rep phase right after your strength phase. For example, if I can do my 5 rep max with a bench press, and I would be doing many sets of 3, and then after 6 weeks, I retest and I'm able to do maybe 7 rep max. And then I would be doing sets of 4 to 5 in my next cycle, and then slowly build up the reps each consecutive cycle without ever having to change the weight. So you may spend a lot of time with one weight, but just keep increasing the reps as you get stronger and you build more mass. Someone is asking, what would be a good way to warm up for my program? It really depends on you. If you don't want to pull anything, if you're stiff, if you find you do need a warm up, especially if you come from a cold country like me, you may want to do some joint mobility first. You may maybe want to do some dynamic stretching, some Indian clubs, or a little bit of light kettlebells for core activation, and also loaded stretching. You can also warm up with lighter weights before your work sets. That's a great way if you don't have time to do anything else. I'd recommend going lighter with your first sets as an easy progression, and then build up to your work sets for your training.